What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here. I gotta be a little quiet because my wife will beat me with a chancla if I'm a little too loud. But in this video, we're gonna be breaking down Iron versus Radiant, or rather talking about a lot of the big questions that come up when people don't understand why some strategies they're incorporating from a high rank is not working at a low rank, or in their low rank games, they just can't make sense of it. So we're gonna break it all down. Go to the GameLeap website if you want to dominate, but without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Now, the first big thing that we need to talk about is the Ares, or LMGs in general, Ares plus ODIN. And every single time you make a tier list, you have players in the comments talking about how broken the Ares is. And when you go down to low ranks, or when you look at low rank games, you really see that they use the Ares incredibly well and incredibly often. Now, you have to wonder, why is that? And a lot of low rank players ask me, why isn't the Ares played a lot at high ranks? If it is so good and they think it's really good, why isn't it played at even the higher ranks? Well, here's the thing. There are certain types of weapons that scale really hard in two distinct factors. The first factor is with mechanical skill, right? A weapon like the Marshal, when people can get consistent headshots, is going to be a very powerful weapon. A weapon like the Sheriff is going to be insanely powerful if people can start hitting headshots or even potentially hitting flick shots on enemies. It's just going to scale with mechanical skill level, and when players are aiming at their toes or can't hit any shots, it's going to be a lot worse than your average weapon. Now, you couple that with the second way that weapons can scale, which is discipline. There are some weapons that are going to scale a lot better when enemies are very disciplined, whether that means disciplined just with the way that they play the map, with their ability use, or how they check angles. A perfect example of this is a weapon like a Shorty. Incredibly powerful if enemies are not disciplined and don't clear out corners with their utility and rather run right across it without full clearing it. Then it looks like a freaking powerhouse. But as a person's discipline scales, the weapon becomes weaker and weaker. Now, when this brings us back to the Ares, specifically with mechanical skill, once players gets to a certain level, if you ever try to incorporate crouching with an Ares at all, which is something that you're going to want to do quite often because it increases your fire rate on the Ares and the Odin specifically, and it makes it a lot more accurate, then you are going to submit yourself to potential flick headshots when you're a stationary target, which once players get to a certain mechanical skill level is going to be far easier for them to do. Does that mean don't use the Ares at low rank? No, you could definitely use the Ares at low rank. Just understand that the weapon's effectiveness is going to scale with time, and maybe you would be better off grinding your mechanical skill with some other weapons instead to prepare yourself for your inevitable climb, especially if you get that GameLeap premium sub. Now, let's talk about the next thing that happens dramatically more at the lower ranks than the high ranks, and it happens way more in ranked than pro play, and it's those 1v5 huge clutches. And I'm not talking about clutches that happen when someone gets an ace, right? They're getting kills throughout the fight and then they win. I'm talking about literally one person's alive and 5 people are alive on the other team, and that one person happens to win. Or it's 1v4 or even 1v3. This happens even more so the lower in rank you go, and even if a player is smurfing, even if a player is far mechanically better than you, this should absolutely never happen, because playing correctly will never let you lose a 3v1 or more ever. You gotta understand that every 3v1 loss is many mistakes piled on top of each other. Now, if you don't believe me, go look at any freaking highlight clip that you've ever seen where someone just solos the entire enemy team, and you're gonna watch enemies peek him one by one at a time, not use correct utility, play really far apart from each other, and not hold corners that he has to clear simultaneously. Now, I know what you're saying. In ranked play, this is something that can happen far too often. However, I promise you that you are making these mistakes as well, no matter what rank you're at. Often, the best thing that you can do when you have teammates that will decide to peek randomly or hold randomly is really notice what your teammates are doing and try to play off them. If they're swinging, swing with them. If they're holding, hold with them. Whatever you have to do to use their life as value so that you don't get clutched up over and over again, that's exactly what you should be doing. Now, the next big question that I'm asked very often from a lower ranked player is they watch these streamers, these Radiant players, and they watch them whip out their abilities at seemingly random times, but every time they whip out their abilities, they get freaking swung and they die, and it happens way too freaking often. Now, this can be incredibly frustrating when you just watch a pro player and they just seem to be able to whip out their abilities whenever they want. Now, there's several things going on. The first thing is a pro player will know, or a high ranked player will know, when other players will or will not swing. That's a very important thing, and it's very important that a lower ranked player or any ranked player that is not their rank might act completely different. So it's incredibly important to keep that in mind. Another thing, they are often tracking the enemy's position even if you aren't. Like if they went and push site and they kill 2 on site, they know that the enemy team would not be holding 3 site because it logically doesn't make any sense. So they know that they can whip out their abilities for a short amount of time until someone rotates from mid to the connector onto the defending site. The last reason that they can often do this is that they know that their teammates are holding for them and that their teammates will punish an enemy that just swings out blindly without using any utility at all. All these factors combined allow for a player to whip out their abilities really frequently in a certain rank, in a certain environment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be watching them and trying to emulate them every time, because it's not going to work 100% of the time. And often you want to use your abilities far safer, or you need to take in that information and decide for yourself, not just copy and paste. Now, the last big question that I have presented to me very often is, how do I win at low rank when people just simply will not play a good team composition? Either no smoke, so the smoker doesn't do their job, or we have bad duelists, or we have, you know, a million initiators or no initiators, or whatever the case may be. They see these optimal team compositions often on streams, but they don't really see it in their ranked games, and they're like, how the hell do I win? You gotta understand, in part because of exactly what we talked about when we talked about the 1v5 clutch, how playing incorrectly allows players to overcome a huge disadvantage. It's the same way, but you need to know that players are playing their characters so incorrectly in the first place a lot of times, making tons of mistakes. Compositions are being played bad even if people are playing a good composition, and individual skill triumphs almost everything the lower in rank you go. This is why, while you should definitely understand the strengths and weaknesses of certain compositions and the matchups of certain characters and the strengths of certain abilities, that does not mean that you auto lose or auto win with any composition at all, and you should definitely not just tunnel vision on that, because in reality it doesn't really matter all that much, and you can lose tons and tons of game. You have a great composition to an enemy team that has 5 duelists. I know it has happened to you, I promise it has. And you can also win tons and tons of games when you have a bad composition. So this is something that's incredibly important. The higher in rank you go, of course, the more disciplined people play, the more they actually play in line with the strengths and weaknesses of a composition, and it becomes a much bigger advantage to play a good composition. But the lower in rank you go, the less and less this matters. So I think this is really important to help you still try to grind through those games where it looks like you might have lost at the character select screen, but I promise you, you can still win it anyways. But go to the GameLeap website if you want in-depth tips and tricks, VOD reviews, and much more, so you can start dominating from Iron to Radiant. We got you. Go check it out. But thanks so much. Love yo faces, and I'll see you next time.